So in part 1 I got to the point of hand sanding the MDF form. If you haven't already, please check out part 1 before watching this video. I picked up this lovely length of oak from a local timber merchant, and I'm going to be using this to create the curved trim for the desk. The desk measures 30mm in thickness, and the oak measures 34mm, which leaves a suitable 4mm contingency for planing and sanding after the glue up. Next, I need to measure the length of the desk curve to determine what length to cut the oak. Then I transferred the size to the oak and made the cut on the chop saw. To stop the thin strips of oak from falling into the saw insert plate, I partially cut an MDF board and clamped it into place. Then I set the saw height about 5mm higher than the thickness of the oak. I made this push stick to push the thin pieces all the way through the saw blade. I don't know why, but the oak kept on burning, despite the fact that I stopped in between times to sharpen the blade. So I'm now having to sand out the burn marks. This sander I'm using, as you can see, is going to take a while, and I was hoping to get it all finished this side of Christmas. But don't worry, I've got a plan. The plan is to use this bad boy. 4 kilograms of raw power. I haven't actually weighed it, but that's my estimation. Now that I had all my oak laminate strips sanded and ready, I laid them one on top of the other with glue between each layer. I wrapped a bit of tape round the middle to keep them together. Then I positioned them into the form. I was a bit nervous compressing these into the curved shape, but everything went okay. And this is them fully clamped. It was nearing the end of the day and I didn't really feel like moving these clamps, so after checking the weather forecast, I made the decision to leave everything just sitting outside overnight. Do you know what I didn't do, which I would do next time, is I forgot to exaggerate the curve to allow for spring back. It's now the next morning and the gamble has paid off as it didn't rain last night. So I'm now eager to get these clamps off and have a look at this oak. It wasn't perfect, but I was very pleased with the outcome. I couldn't resist trying it on the desk to examine the fit, and clearly you can see there is some degree of springback. Nothing too serious, thankfully though. I am now making a bonding mix of PVA glue and water, which I will paint onto the MDF to seal it, and this will help give it some traction for gluing down the Formica and oak trim. So I'm just painting this on quite heavy. Fortunately it was a nice warm sunny day and it was drying fairly quickly. So I left the bonding to dry and turned my attention to cleaning up the curved oak laminate. The oak pieces had actually slipped out of line a bit more than I would have liked, and this gave me a little bit more work than necessary. The goal here is to make this appear as if it were one piece of wood. I noticed the oak was tapering out wider towards the ends, so I sanded that down a bit more even using the hand belt sander. Also, the slippage of the laminates was enough to leave this ugly recess, and I did not have enough contingency to remove this completely. In between sanding with the electric sanders, I was doing a lot of hand sanding too. I found using a chisel as a scraper was really effective in removing excess glue and achieving a flat, smooth surface. And yet more sanding with the power sander. By this time the hard work was starting to pay off and the oak was starting to look more like a single piece of wood. Now to deal with those ends that were tapering out a bit wider. The belt sander wasn't long in taking them down. I was just admiring my handiwork, then I heard this noise.
What? What?
Make yourself tea.
Alright, okay.
I stopped filming at this point, but I tore into this a good bit more with the belt sander. I decided to fill in the screw divots with wood filler because I was paranoid the thin Formica could potentially crack if pressure was applied to one of these points. In order to fill in any gaps in the oak, I smudged wood filler into both top and bottom surfaces and let it dry. The oak measured 15mm in thickness, so I'm now setting the saw at that width. Off camera I ripped and sanded the oak for the straight side of the desk, and here it is. During the sanding I noticed the PVA bonding mix was starting to come off, so off camera I applied another coat. After sanding I blew the dust off with an airline. Once the filler in the oak had hardened, I took it into the workshop and gave it yet another sand. And then again by hand.